Sifu Rafael is the founder and host of Coaching Call, Heroes Rising, The Seer Show, and New Tip Daily. He works with individuals, groups, and businesses and helps them find clarity, purpose, and understanding of who they really are in business and personal life. Sifu Rafael has used his skills to develop a variety of multifaceted businesses in the martial arts and fitness industries. He owns and operates a 10,000 square foot martial arts and fitness facility in New York. Jose Escobar is an award-winning, nationally recognized person.
Lisa, I got to tell you, I am so sorry. Something is going wacky here because I'm thrilled that you and I are here today, but it's the wrong show. It's the wrong thing. And that's why I hit the wrong information. So
No
what I'm going to
problem.
do is, uh, do me a favor. Don't go away. I'm going to log off and log back in. This happened twice already today
Oh,
on two different
no.
shows, but that's
How
okay. Don't
annoying.
go away. Okay. I'll be
Yes,
right
I'll
back.
stay here.
I'll log off and log back in.
Sure
Everybody,
thing.
if you're listening, thank you for being here with us. We're coming right back. Okay. All set. Let's try that again. Let's do the intro and then we'll come back and take a look. Actually, we don't need the intro. It's okay. These things happen from time to time, and it's weird because it's never happened before like this. This is a new weird. But Lisa, you're all the way from my home country. You're in Colombia, South America, and here I am in New York. How are you doing
Absolutely.
today?
I'm very well, thank you so much. I've had a lovely morning. I got a good workout in, wonderful breakfast, and now preparing for this show and to speak with you and your wonderful listeners. So I'm just grateful to be here.
Yes, thank you, thank you. And with all the hiccups, you still stood around and thank you for doing that. That shows your resilience, right? Your
As a
willingness.
follow podcast host, I also know that, hiccups happen, as you said.
Yeah, yeah. This is a new one. I don't know if I like it. For me to have to
Hopefully, you
log
can get
off,
to the
log on.
bottom of it.
Well, maybe, maybe not. Sometimes things are a mystery because the wrong show is showing up and all that stuff. When we consider Lisa Franz, who we're talking about?
We are talking about someone who is passionate about living life to the fullest, but not to the extent that we're being risky, we're creating an unhealthy environment or a body that's unhealthy. So essentially, I love traveling, I love exploring, I love, testing different cuisines and getting to know various cultures, but even just when I'm a little bit more settled in a place or visiting my home country as well, even just experiencing time with family, really being present, but all in a manner that is still conducive to me allowing me live in the body that I love living in. Because for a long time I was struggling with that. I always thought I have to pick between living a life that I truly enjoy living and having a body that I truly feel good in. And so now it's my mission to teach others that yes, you can have both. Of course, nothing comes without a restriction or nothing comes without payoffs. So we do need to consider that. I'm not saying you can, overindulge in your grandma's cake every single day. But just generally speaking, I love giving people the tools to navigate both their life and their health to the best of their ability.
I love that. I love that. One of the things that I'm very interested in is the journey that you've been on. And for me to get a better insight as to who you are, I would love to know about your childhood. Where were you born? Where did you grow up? And who influenced you before the age of 10? Because you're way far from where you normally were, right? Because you're in my home country. So tell us about your birth country and who influenced you before the age of 10.
I love that. I've actually never been asked that on a
Mm.
podcast before. So thank you for creating such wonderful questions. For those of you listening, I'm German. I'm from Germany. I was born in Germany. However, my dad also has been bitten by the travel bug. And because of that, he signed up to be a development worker. And we moved to West Africa when I was 2.5 or almost 3. Well, actually, we had to go to France for half a year before moving to West Africa, a country called Burkina Faso, which is just a small country next to Mali, next to the Ivory Coast. And yeah, that's where I was living with my parents and my older sister for 3 years until I was 6. And then we moved back to Germany. And of course, needless to say that it's a little bit difficult reintegrating, but I think I still loved being back closer to family, at least for a little while. And then when in Germany, we have a bit of a different school system. So when you're 10, it's kind of decided how so when you're 10, you finish elementary school and you go into your continued education, and you can sort of pick what schooling system you want to go into. And so I went down a musical route where you also had to learn Latin, but I essentially already knew at that point I want to live in a different country, and I've been really fascinated by the US throughout my teenage years. I really wanted to go to the US. So even when I was 10, I knew I wanted to do like a high school year. But yes, I mean, you asked up until the point of my 10th year of life. I would say the people that influenced me the most were certainly my parents, because they were the most consistent. Otherwise, I didn't see most of my family or any friends for 3 years.
Wow. So that's very interesting that you, at 10 years old, you kind of get a choice of what kind of schooling you want. That's powerful.
It's powerful, but in my opinion, it's not a great system at all, because it also depends. So it's not just that you can pick, do I want to go down the mathematical route? Do I want to go down the musical route or whatever? It's also in terms of how do I say that? In terms of like level of education. So when you're 10, depending on your grades, that you can either go on for another 5 years or 4 years to become something like a hairdresser or something more manually oriented. You can, depending on your grades, you might be able to go for another 6 years. That would give you more the possibility to become an accountant or something of that sort. And only if you have higher grades, you're allowed to go on for another 8 or 9 years, which is the only way that grants you university entry. So only if you have that higher aspect or go to that higher education route, you have the possibility to become something like a doctor or even study exercise science and nutrition like I did. But I believe because of that, Germany has a very divided population, or not population, but society straight from the bat. So for example, I don't or didn't have any friends that went on to become a hairdresser or anything like that. Like you continue mingling with your level of education, and I personally don't think that that is great, because education doesn't mean intelligence, and education certainly doesn't also mean success in life. So I often would have wished to have a bit more of a broader exposure to a variety of people.
Very interesting. It's when I said that was kind of cool and everything. I'm thinking the fact that a 10-year-old would have weight on their life. Meanwhile, a 10-year-old doesn't know anything about life.
Oh, absolutely not. No, absolutely not. Most
It's
of the
so
people,
interesting.
or most of the time, of course, the parents end up choosing. They think like, oh, I want my child to be a doctor one day, so I'm going to put them
Mm.
into the mathematical type of school. Or
Mhm.
one day, I want my child to be this and that. So, yeah, you're absolutely right. With 10 years old, you have no idea who you are, what you want to be or do.
Well, a lot of people, even when they're 18, don't have an idea either.
Or even at 34, we are all still
Even at
figuring it out,
34.
I think.
Some people in their 60s still haven't figured it out. It's so challenging. It must be challenging when a kid wants to do something, but their grades say no. But they're not given the chance to say, well, I can improve my grades. I can change my behaviors. I can change my actions. Does someone who does not have good grades get a chance to do that later on?
Um, I don't think, at least not the easy route. So there are
Mm,
certain ways where if let's just say you're in that lower, more manual type school going onwards, and they really have the ambition to work their way up, there is a way of like you do some extra tests, or if you are really at the top of that particular schooling system, then they might allow you access into the middle one, and then from there somehow. So I know some people who have, through very hard efforts and extending their schooling probably by another 1 or 2 years at least, have managed to get university entry.
mm,
But it's certainly not easy, and very much of exactly as you say, it encourages a fixed mindset, in the sense of this is the bracket that you belong into.
mm.
Don't try to crawl your way up there, unfortunately. And going down is a lot easier. So if you're at the very bottom of your class, in the middle, or in the higher school system, then you can easily drop down. But yes, I
Mm,
do think that it is quite sad how it can segregate society from such an early point onwards.
mm, mm. It was such interesting. I never heard of it till now. Thank you for sharing that with
Oh,
us.
my absolute pleasure.
So you told us that your dad loved travel, and I guess that's where you got your bug from, right? That you wanted to travel. Um, when did you start traveling? Were your teens? I mean, on your own, I mean.
So yeah, I guess if we go even into the smaller details, so like I also had a really good she was more like a pen pal when I was growing up, and she lived about 2.5 hours away from where I lived. So if you ask my mom, when did Lisa start traveling, even at the age of 6 years, so once we had come back from Africa, I would go into like take a train on my own and
Mm,
visit that friend. Like with Sig, my mom would obviously drop me off in the train, make
right.
sure I'm in there. It would be a direct train, and my friend's mom would pick me up. But I would already have the urge to like, I want to go out and explore on my own and visit
Right.
this friend on my own when I was 6 years old. And so I would do that once a month or so. But actual travel on my own was then indeed when I was 16. I did end up persuading my parents to letting me do a high school year in the US, in Nebraska, as a matter of fact. So out of
Mhm.
all places, it's just where they placed me. You could just sign up with an exchange company, although no one ever came to Germany, but it's still called exchange. So you sign up and they place you wherever they can find a host family for you. And in my case, that happened to be Nebraska. And at
Mm.
first, when I heard about where I'm going to be placed, I actually started crying because I didn't even know where that was. And I jumped onto Google and I was like, where's Nebraska? So I took a look in the middle of the country. My best friend, she was placed in California. And so, of course,
Mm.
I had all these pictures in my mind about California, and I was super
Right.
jealous. And then pops up Nebraska and it says, the Cornhusker state. I'm like, I don't even know what a Cornhusker is. Like, what the heck is a Cornhusker? But fast forward a year or even to now, I had the most incredible time. I was staying in a wonderful, teeny tiny little town of 1,000 inhabitants called Pawnee City in the southeast of Nebraska, about an hour and a half south of Lincoln. And the wonderful thing about this was that I got to try all the sports. Everybody knew my name. Like I'd walk down the street and 80-year-old Grandpa John would be like, "Hello, Lisa, how are you doing today?" And I felt very much integrated into the real, or at least what it was in my perception, real American life. Very Midwest friendly, as I guess you would say. Whereas, for example, my friend who was placed in California, she had a horrible host family. She had to change host families. She was in a high school where the student body was over 1,000 people big. So nobody cared who she was. And of course, a lot of other foreigners. So it was just kind of like, oh, you're one amongst many. And she didn't get to play any sports. So for me, I had a wonderful introduction into traveling, but also just life in the US. And so when I came back at the age of 17, I knew, okay, as soon as I finished high school, so 2 more years, as soon as I finished high school, I want to go on a trip around the world. And so these last 2 years of high school, I essentially worked more in a coffee shop than I went to school. Still got some good grades, but just at the bare minimum, and managed to save up enough money to go on a trip around the world and work in various places along the way, but also do some volunteer work. And then on that trip, I met my ex-husband, who is a New Zealander. And after meeting him, I did go back home to Germany, started studying there at the European Sports University, but really, really tried hard to get a scholarship for a university in New Zealand so I could finish my studies over there, and essentially spent 10 years over in New Zealand before becoming a digital nomad in 2019.
A digital nomad. Explain to us what that really means. Also, Lisa, at one point, I'd love to know where people can find you. So if you want to, in the private chat on your
Of
right side,
course. Yes, I will
just
type
give
that
us your link and then I'll
in
put it
or
across the screen.
yeah, absolutely. So everyone can find me basically on all platforms, but mostly on Instagram as Nutrition Coaching and Life. Same handle for YouTube. Our website is the same, nutritioncoachingandlife.com, and the podcast is Nutrition and Life as well. But yeah, thank you so much for asking. So you were asking what digital nomading actually means. I mean, it's a term that's been thrown around a little bit and maybe even bashed a bit, to be honest. We could also just say someone who lives location free and so is not bound to any one nation necessarily. I regard myself a little bit more as a citizen of the world rather than being tied to a particular country. And of course, someone who can work from anywhere. So I have been working from anywhere or location free since 2019, and I love it. But I will say that it always sounds better to most people than what it is potentially, and I truly don't think it is for a lot of people, especially when the pandemic hit. So many of my friends or just people that I knew, they said, "Oh, I want to do what you do." All that you see most of the time on my social media is like maybe one post about work and then something about a beach and then something about the gym and then a delicious meal. So people think that's all that you do all day long. But
Right.
I mean, you have to be, number one, you have to be very disciplined, because especially if you're living close to the beach or in a wonderful location, it's always there. So it's like you constantly have that cake in front of your nose. But very, very quickly, I learned that I needed to get the work done first and then play. And if you're not structured or self-disciplined on your own, I have met so many digital nomads that had to go back home after 3-4 months because they wasted all their money, they didn't make any income, nothing. And so truly, I would say the people like me that have been doing it for several years are few and far between. Also, of course, because it is hard to form some good connections to get your your social cup filled, so to speak, or ideally some people find their partner who's also location free, and so you can continue traveling together, or you might end up settling somewhere. But I will say, for me personally, in the first year, I was just staying in places like 2 weeks here, 4 weeks there, 2 weeks here, 4 weeks there. That gets tiring very, very quickly. After the first year, I said, okay, I'm going to extend that, and maybe like 3 months there, 4 months here, 3 months, and so on. And that was a lot better already. And then kind of transitioning into, okay, I'm going to find a country where I'm going to set up a little bit of a base, and then from there traveling. And so the first time that was Mexico, and so now it's been Colombia. And one thing that I love about your country is its geographical location, because within 2 hours I can go on a weekend trip to Panama, I can go on a weekend trip to Aruba or whatever. Like, it's all so close, and I just love it.
Nice. So go ahead and put that link in the private chat so I can share it with everybody.
Okay, sorry. So the chat is at show chat.
It's over on the right-hand side.
Let me see. Oh, here we
On your
go.
screen. There you go.
I had it in full screen, so I couldn't see it. So it's
no worries. I love the fact that you said the most important thing is that in order to play, you have to take care of business first.
Yep.
And everybody wants to do what you want to do, but they forget the most important part, taking care of how you live that lifestyle. And I love the fact that you also said it's not for everybody.
Oh, absolutely not. Absolutely not.
I'm sure it could get lonely too if you're by yourself, right?
Yes. I mean, I will say I'm someone I actually enjoy and need quite a bit of time in solitude. So probably more than the average person. But I do very much enjoy my own company. But you do have to make the effort to go out and meet people. Fortunately, I like practicing Spanish here, for instance. Fortunately, also, like, if you go to these places where there are other digital nomads, it's easier to connect. So, for example, whenever I go back home to Germany, to my hometown, I've said to my mom before, I don't feel as lonely anywhere as I do here, because people are a lot more closed-minded. That doesn't mean that generally speaking Germans are like that at all, but it's a small town. So if I go to a cafe, it's people are not as, we don't do small talk as much as perhaps in the US, or people are busy, they have their stuff that needs to get done. Whereas if I go to like a plaza here and I see other people working on their laptop, I might just be like, asking a question, where's the best place I can have lunch today, or whatever. And so then they open up and start talking as well. So I have met incredible people. I have truly met such people where I was like, I didn't even know that existed. Like, people that are so interesting and have such colorful life stories, that I'm not saying you have to be a traveler to have that, but in general, people that love sharing their story. And I'm so grateful for each and every one that I have met.
I'm sure. And when you're meeting people who are traveling, I'm sure they have so many varied stories. Right? And that's what makes them interesting, right? Because you're not going to believe what I saw, right?
Oh, absolutely. Like, I mean, their experiences for one, but also their professions. So for instance, I chatted with someone who organized retreats, or sort of like, retreats, you could say, for high stake brokers, but also traders and so on. And he would take them on adventure camps into the desert, where they're exposed to some really high pressure situations, like with sleep deprivation, or just like climbing somewhere dangerous. I'm like, okay, how is that connected to trading? How is it helping them in their job? And he would explain to me. And so, like, things like that, or of course, also people that get by on hardly any money, and then people that have more of like a luxury attitude towards traveling, or towards helping the people that they meet as well. So it's just such a wonderful variety to see, and just shows us that we're all different for a reason.
I've met several nomads along the way, and one particular couple was I was was in the Bahamas, and I saw them every day, and we started talking to this couple, and then he tells me that he's been living in the hotel in the penthouse or the whole, the upstairs, the whole. He's got the whole. I'm like, wow, how are you doing that? He goes, oh, this is what I do for a living. So he did investments and all this stuff. And then
Oh,
he would stay there for months, and then he would travel to a different hotel, and everywhere he stayed, he got the best accommodations. And he had been doing it for years and years. And along the way, he met his fiance, who also was doing similar.
oh,
So now
beautiful.
they partnered up together, and he goes, all I do is live in these luxury hotels. I'm like, wow, that's interesting. I said, what's the shortest amount of time? He said, a week. I said, the longest? He goes, 7, 9 months in one particular place. I know. And the amount of money that it costs to stay in a penthouse in a hotel, right? To stay on the top floor. It's incredible. So for him, it was no brainer because when he went to this particular place, he would bring clients.
Mm.
So he used the hotel for his business. So he was brilliant in that regard.
Very, very smart. And yeah, I can imagine that still even though it sounds like heaven, you probably still also get tired of not leaving your suitcase somewhere. So I'm at a point now, 6 years into my digital nomading, where I am actually trying to get a visa for Colombia so that I can get an apartment here and use that as I was saying, as my base, and then just go on a monthly trip somewhere else for like a few days or so, because I am craving a little bit more consistency. I'm craving even just in terms of material things. I'm a very, very minimalistic person. I mean, I've been living out of literally maybe 1.5 cases for a year and for nearly 6 years. But I'm getting to a place where I'm like, oh, it would be nice to have more than 3 pairs of shoes. It would be nice to. So and
Right.
like I love playing the piano. I haven't been able to play the piano for a long time. I would like to have a dog within a couple of years, and so all these sorts of things where you're like, I feel that I'm getting to the point of I want to nest a little bit.
Mm. You want to have a place they call home or
Yes,
base,
precisely.
right? Base
Yes,
as you called it,
exactly.
a home base, a home base.
Yes, precisely. That's a good term.
Yeah. When you decided to go into this nomad, what was your first strategy to say, I can sustain this? Did you even have an idea how long you were going
I
to
did not
sustain it
have an
for?
idea how long. I actually specifically said when people asked me, like my grandma or even my mom, they were like, "Is that what you're doing now?" Because in Germany, we also have very much of an attitude of like you learn a profession and you do that for the rest of your life, or you build a house and that's going to be your long-term house. It's not as fluent as nowadays where we're like, this is my first home and in 2 years I'm trading that up to my next home or whatever.
Mm,
And so yeah, when I do have to say that so I did study exercise science and sport nutrition, but after that I actually did a little bit of a detour and worked as a police officer in New Zealand. And after a few years, I realized how horrible that was on my hormones, on my body, and that it truly
mm,
wasn't my passion. So even while I was still in full-time employment, I started building up a part-time business as a nutrition coach. I started working for another company because I simply wanted to get more experience and have a little bit of guidance before starting my own thing. So when I quit the police, I already had a part-time job, and within only a couple of months I built it up to a full-time job, and that gave me a little bit of security as well, and just knowing that I'm working for someone else who can give me guidance, that really helped too. But then throwing in the travel aspect, I actually went back to Germany for a few months, I think 3-4 months, with the intention of, okay, I think I might want to move back towards or closer to my family. But once I was there, I noticed I couldn't live there anymore. I love
mm,
Germany. I think it's a beautiful country. German people are wonderful people. Um, but it's not for me. It's too cold in winter. It's too structured. People are colder, and I just love being in a warmer climate and exploring different countries. And so then I left with just the intention of I'm gonna see how long I enjoy it, and if I don't, I'll come back next year. And that's been going on since then. I've always said I'm only gonna do it for as long as I truly enjoy it. And I don't have. I mean, I know I can always go back home to Germany since I have a citizenship or I'm a German citizen and so on. So it's nice to have that option, but it's just not the place for me to be. And every year that I go back and visit, it's kind of a reconfirmation of like, you don't belong here. And even this year when I was back home, it was the very first year that my mom actually said, she was like, yeah, Lisa, I know now what you mean. You don't belong here. And I was like I almost took offense at first. Like, what are you talking about? And then she's like, no, you've changed too much. You don't fit into this. You could, of course, if you wanted to fit into the society, but I noticed that the things that we have here don't make you happy permanently. And so it's nice if you just come back regularly. We know, we're always here for you, but I understand now that you're a free bird.
Love that. Because the fact that your mom recognized it, I mean, that's kind of cool in a way. Let me ask you a question. I don't know if you've ever thought of it. We sometimes never think about the end of our life. But if I'm going to take you there now. The last month of your life, where are you living?
Oh, interesting. I will say I do somewhat regularly think of the end of my life. I'm big on Stoic literature, Stoicism, and one of the big quotes or sort of mantras that they encourage you to think about is "memori mortem." I think it's like a Latin quote, and it just means like think of your death, not just your own death, but like that everything is dying. Like your days are every day you have lost one day essentially, right, in your bucket of life. Or if you have kids, if you have a dog, if you have parents, think that death is going to happen. It is going to happen. It's inevitable, and not thinking about it is actually worse, because then it catches you by surprise. You don't know how to deal with it, or you might have regrets that you didn't spend enough time with this and that person. So I will say that my life truly is a life by design. And of course, I have asked myself a few times, am I going to regret not spending as much time with my family or the people back home, or not staying in one particular spot? And so far, the answer is no. I'm very conscious and mindful of the way that I'm living. But to answer your question, that is not something I have specifically thought about in the sense of where I am. But I do hope that I'm not in a place of suffering. That is probably the main wish and hope that I have. It doesn't really matter where in the world, but then I'm in a place of contentedness, and that I have as few regrets as possible at that point in my life.
Well answered. Well answered. Yeah, we don't want to end our life in pain or with too many regrets, right? Because life is for living, right? And sometimes you have to take chances, and sometimes those chances don't give you exactly what you were looking for. And sometimes that's a mistake, right?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, there are so many things I can say to that point. So, for example, when I was 18, my best friend at the time from high school, she passed away in a car accident. So that was a big, on top of my travel bug that I already had within me anyway. But that was a big wake up for me of like, I don't want to pursue a career or job just for the money. And she was someone, she had never ever left the country. And she was always saying, oh, Lisa, when I have this and that much money saved up, or when I'm blah, 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 then we're going to go and travel here and there. And she never did. And then a few months later, I was on the passenger seat while someone was like it was a very foggy kind of night, and my girlfriends and I, we were driving somewhere, and someone was in the middle of the road, and we hit him because he was completely drunk and jumped out on the autobahn, actually. So obviously a
Wow.
very fast road.
Right.
And he passed away straight away. And yeah, he was 19 years old and
Mm.
had not lived a full life. So those were probably two things that have really influenced me as well. And then on top of that, I did a lot of processing after my marriage ended almost 6 years ago. And I don't regret a single day, month, or year that I spent with my ex-husband. It made me into the person that I am today. And I have wonderful memories, but I also know that we're both happier now in the respective locations that we're at right now. And so I do think that mistakes are only mistakes if we do them twice, if we don't learn from them. So I try from everything where I'm like, oh, was this good, or did I make a mistake or whatever. I try to see it as a growth opportunity, a learning experience, and so on. But yeah, making sure that I don't repeat the same patterns, particularly when it comes to relationships. I think we're all kind of primed to try or wanting to try to repeat the same patterns, and of course we need to break through them if we want to be quote unquote successful, whatever that means to the person.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. I love the fact of definitely understanding your life the way you do. I mean, you're brilliant when it comes to that. Don't wait till tomorrow to do what you could do today, because you don't know. Tomorrow is not a given, right? And you learned that early on. Unfortunately, you saw two young people pass away, and so many people. Yes, we have to prepare for tomorrow. We should, right? But we waste so much time preparing for tomorrow. We're not living today, right? So,
Absolutely. I truly think that that is the art of life, finding that fine line. Because as I was opening up with kind of as well, someone might hear that and they might say, okay, I'm taking all my savings and I'm just going to plan a trip for the next month. I don't care what happens in 2025. And I'm going to eat
ooh,
everything that I want and I'm not going to work anymore, blah, blah, blah. That is truly not what I'm saying, and I don't think it is what you're saying either. But finding that line between living in the moment, enjoying each day, and also creating an even grander future. So I think to give the listener also some actionable takeaways as well. I love to have things in my day-to-day life, like if I say to someone, picture your perfect day, but I don't want you to picture your perfect vacation or whatever dream, like just a regular Tuesday in your life. How do you want that to look like from beginning to end? So even just getting clarity on that, I think, can be really, really helpful. And within that, finding pleasure on the small things. So for example, I look forward to my workout every single day. And while people might not love working out as much as I do, find something else that can be your daily cup of coffee. For me, that's also something where I'm like, oh, I love it. Not even just for the caffeine. I drink decaf most of the time because I have so much energy. But generally speaking, like, find those little pockets where you're like, yeah, okay, my day might suck. I know, I'm well aware that not every day can be the happiest of my life, but I have these little things to look forward to that all in all make our life. And then of course, every now and then, go for that trip that you were saying, like, don't wait until, well, when I'm retired, I'm going to go on that trip, or when the kids are older and so on. You don't know. It's not a given that you have that time with them or even you yourself. And just another story on that front. So my uncle, he has always worked in hospitality for as long as I can remember. So he owned 3 restaurants, and I barely got to see him when I grew up because he was working so much. And it was his dream to have a wonderful villa finca up in Mallorca in Spain, and to retire there a little bit earlier than the average person. His goal was 60. And he actually managed to buy that wonderful property. And I had the pleasure and honor to stay there with him for 6 months, and with him and his wife over the course of the pandemic. And it was an incredible experience, like wonderful, wonderful Spanish island. But one part of his dream was to have a vineyard and to have his own wine, to make his own wine as well. And he is not able to cultivate the vineyard himself because he has all kinds of back issues. He had battled prostate cancer just a couple of years ago as well. So he can walk around the property, but he doesn't get the pleasure out of knowing that he picked his own grapes. He did all of that because he can't bend down anymore. And so I actually, while I had these 6 months with him, I had some good conversations with him. And I asked, I mean, you have had an incredible career. You met some amazing people out of the culinary world and so on. And he said, yeah, Lisa, but you know what I regret the most is I have ruined completely my relationship with my kids. And there's no way back. I've tried apologizing to them several times. You don't get those years back. And same with my grandkids. And I've also made a lot of people angry during the years of work that I've had, because I yelled at all my employees just because I was tired. And like there's a lot of things where he said he was not the person that he wanted to be. So again, it all comes at a cost. We can of course ask ourselves the question, would he have been able to purchase this villa, his dream retirement location, if he would not have worked so hard? Maybe not, maybe, we don't know. But yeah, I guess all we can do from this is like try to make sure that we are choosing our own future consciously, I think.
What great insight that he was able to give you, especially during a time where we didn't know what was going on with the world, right? Entirely, everybody shut down. It wasn't one place; it was the whole world shut down. The whole world didn't know what we were going to be facing. When you consider those conversations with your uncle, did that give you an insight as to how you needed to live your life?
A little bit, certainly. I mean, at that point, so that was 2020. At that point, I was already very much in the self-development space, and I used to think, I grew up reading a lot of like books about girls that had horses and blah blah. So I loved reading, and my mom always said up until I was maybe 14, 15 years old, I would just read every single book like that. But then as I got older, I thought I don't actually like reading anymore. Like novels are kind of boring. I'd rather watch TV. And I just didn't realize that it was the kind of books that I was reading that I didn't like. And then when I was 27, I found my mentor at the time, he recommended the first self-development books for me. And I was like, eye-opening, like light bulbs going on. I was like, oh my gosh, this is speaking to my soul. I love reading this. There are people that are thinking like this, like me as well. Like they're giving me inspiration for how I want to live my life. Cool. So since then, I have loved reading and just basically digging into how to create the life that we want to live. So when I was speaking with him in 2020, I don't think that it was like really new for me. It was just another good reminder. I mean, those regular reminders, I think we get them every time that we hear about the passing of someone, or near passing of someone, perhaps also, or just when someone is permanently made incapable of doing something, or missing, quote unquote, missing out on one of their dreams. In those cases, I think we are always reminded of, hey, you get back on the track of living the life that you truly want. And it's definitely made me a lot more alert as well, just in the way that people speak as well, because so many people use the I should have, I would have, I could have, I might do one day, or I will, blah, blah, blah. But none of that matters if you don't actually do. So I don't actually even like sharing big goals with people unless that there's already a course of action towards that, because otherwise it's like, oh yeah, who's going to follow through with that? So show me the actions, not the words. That's kind of what I try to live by as well.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. When we think about life in general, what are your thoughts on the people that you do meet, yet they don't pursue anything to make their life better?
It's in my opinion, it's kind of sad, because in the end, you can only lead a horse to the water, and they need to drink themselves, right? And I think it's most sad when it happens with people that you love and that you're close to. And I've seen that many times with family members. They might even ask for help initially, or they might say like, oh, you're doing this and that, can you tell me more about it? And I'm like, yes, I would love to. But then they get caught or sucked back into their previous habits or routines and start making excuses. I don't want, maybe not even excuses, but I do realize that it's really difficult breaking out of your environment if you're the only one who's wanting to grow. I think that is the most unfortunate thing. The sooner someone can find someone who has a similar interest in breaking out of that, and whether that's through a Facebook group, whether that is through a coach, whether that's through a deep conversation with your partner or whatever, and just saying like, hey, I'm unhappy with how this is going. This is no criticism to you, but I would love to achieve blah, 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 blah. Maybe your partner says, man, this is amazing. I have been thinking exactly the same thing, right? Like you never know unless you open up or unless you try. But it is the saddest thing to see when people want to make the effort, and then essentially they're just pulled back down from what they think other people might expect of them, or just the routine. I think it's that routine that you're just like a hamster wheel. Just because you've been running in there the whole entire time is why you jump back in there. And we're all primed to go for that comfort zone. And the comfort zone doesn't necessarily mean that it's the right thing. And I think that is something we need to be conscious of, and all kind of almost alert of as well, because we often mistake comfort for that's the right thing to do, although it might just be the thing that we have been doing all the time and not necessarily the right thing.
Great insight. When you started this whole journey that you're on, right? You said you started part-time and you built it into full-time. What is it that you started? And I know you talked about fitness and nutrition and all that. Is that what, listen, you're in a place, you have to pay bills, you have to do all these different things. How are you currently paying those bills? I mean, we don't need specific details, but somebody listening to this shows, they may be saying, I want what Lisa has. Meanwhile, they don't understand that you have to do certain things
Oh,
in
absolutely.
order to take care of you, right?
Absolutely. I mean, this is my nutrition coaching is my full-time job. I would say that I probably work at least 40 hours per week, but I love what I do. So that's a big difference. However, when I said I was transitioning out of the police, and my initial thought was just, I didn't actually know how I wanted to do that, because of course, if you studied exercise science and health promotion and nutrition, it's kind of like, what do you do with that? Most people think like, oh, the personal trainer, or I don't know, anything in the health sort of space. So my first thought was just, actually, I just want to be able to work location free. I took like an online course on, I think it was like web design or something, and I was halfway through the course and I was like, what the hell are you doing, Lisa? You hate being on the laptop all the time. You love connecting with people, so what are you doing? So okay, then I was like, okay, how can I do training program, like, because that was sort of the time where online personal training became popular. So I started another course on that. I was like, how do I do that? And then I realized, I thought, people don't really make that much progress unless they address nutrition and training. So then I went back to the drawing board and did another few certifications. So you notice a lot of expenses before even any pennies came in, but I saw it as an investment into my future. I had gotten to the point where I'm like, I cannot go on with this any longer. I need to get out of here, out of New Zealand, out of the police job. I want to be able to create my own schedule. So my pain was so big that I had a huge driver. So I did those nutrition certifications, and then actually my next thought, again, still no money coming in, my next thought was, how do I learn best? Well, if I get a nutrition coach for myself, I will see how they work, and then I can use that strategy to work with clients myself. So for at least half a year, I had a nutrition coach, again, all still while working in the police, and then started my own little business, or putting out my feelers for, is anybody hiring a nutrition coach? And through this, I then came to that company. So fast forwarding to now, I'm still a nutrition coach. I write some online programs, but the majority of what I do is nutrition coaching. So essentially, I either talk with people on the phone, or often, because of time zones, many of our clients are also in the Philippines or Dubai or wherever it might be. So with those, I mostly work just with voice messages, so that, they can listen whenever they want. I can listen and answer whenever I want. But most of the people that I work with, they want to lose some body fat, they want to gain a little bit more muscle, but they also just want to feel better in their bodies, and they don't want to go through these constant cycles of yo-yo dieting, putting on the weight over the holidays and then losing it again, and then putting it on while they're on vacation and then losing it again, and over the course of the years piling on more weight. And because we all know how that affects your mind as well, how that affects your performance at work or whatever. You're just not showing up as the kind of person that you want to be. And so, yeah, that's what I do. Essentially, that's what pays my bills. And I, as I said, I love every aspect of it. I love that I get to connect with people all over the world.
Beautiful, beautiful. My other question for you, and you're talking about connecting with people all over the world. You're doing it in English, yes?
Yes, I have a couple of clients in Germany as well, with whom I speak German with, and I've actually had 3 Spanish-speaking clients so far. So
Mm,
I'm making progress into the Latin American world as well, and they
nice.
have been very patient and kind with me. So it's nice. I'm dabbling my feet into those waters.
Well, I love the fact that you're now not only multilingual, but you're literally working around the world, right? And so you're not tied, even though you want to be. You want to have a home base, right? And I think a home base is kind of cool because you can come and go whenever you want, right? Yet not being tied to it. Yeah, maybe you have bills that are going to be paid even when you're not there, but it'll be sustained because of the work you're doing, right? Wherever you
Exactly.
go, you'll make enough money to sustain that. You earlier said that you get excited when it's coffee time. You live in the place that makes the best coffee in the world.
Oh,
Tell me
yes.
about that.
It is wonderful. Anybody who is considering traveling to Colombia, I very much recommend it. And even though I'm living in Bogota, in the capital, I would, of course, recommend people that travel here to also explore some of the other parts of the country. And one of the wonderful things about Colombia, for those of you that don't know, is just its variety in literally everything. So you have the beaches, really, really hot, a little bit humid as well. You have actually 2 beaches. So you have the Caribbean, and then you also have the Pacific. So where you can do some whale watching and stuff. You have the Amazon area, and you have some desert area as well. But then you also have the beautiful, what is called Zona Cafetera, and that's where we have most of the coffee plantains. And so traveling there is actually one of my favorite places to go to here in Colombia, because it's, in my opinion, just the perfect climate. So it's like between 70 and 80 degrees all year round. In Colombia, the
Wow.
climate does not change because it's so close to the equator. It's the same all year round. And then on top of that, it looks wonderful. You have the palm trees, you have
Right.
the hilly regions, and you can learn about how they cultivate and have cultivated the coffee. I only just recently learned that the real coffee culture here in Colombia has only really grown over the last sort of 10, 15 years. And before that, all the coffee was exported and they kept almost all the cheap, the crappier stuff within the country. And they'd have like filter coffee, which they call tinto here, but you wouldn't get your nice espresso or cappuccino or something like that. That would have been completely foreign. Only now that they are also getting more tourists and I'm just realizing that that is a huge potential to tap into. Because I mean, coffee is a good source to make money, right? Like if you think about it, an espresso or so, you have maybe cost of 20 cents and you can ask for $5 for it hypothetically. So let's tap into that, right? And so it's wonderful to see that they're starting to keep more of their own culture here. And also how one of the things that I truly love the most about Colombia is how proud people are of their country, of their food. And you could say that about many countries, but in Germany, we very much grew up with the fact that being German is not necessarily something to be proud of. Up until probably 2006, the Soccer World Cup, where Germany did really well, it was not even really accepted to have the flag outside the house or to like face paint with the German flag or anything like that. It's kind of like maybe during a World Cup, but aside from that, let's bring those flags back in because, you know, you're supposed to be ashamed of your history and so on. And so now, thankfully, that has changed, that is changing. But it just always makes me very happy when I come to a place where I know, like people here, they're like, no, Bogota is the best place in the world. And I have traveled to many other countries where they just say like, why are you coming here? We all want to immigrate to Germany, or we would love to have, you know, your passport or so. And I don't get that feeling here, while people do like to experience new cultures as well and you know, go somewhere else for a year or so. I feel like they're very family oriented and very tied to being Colombian, and I think that's beautiful.
It is. It is. As a Colombian, I've never returned since I came.
You mentioned that, yes.
It was 1973. So I became so American. It's something. And everybody tells me, you got to go to Cartagena. I'm like, okay.
I do encourage you one day to go back just to reconnect with your roots.
Yeah. Actually, I was in Bogota 2 weeks before, you know, my last 2 weeks in Colombia was in Bogota. Prior to that, I lived in Cali, and then I was born in Pereira.
Okay, in the closer to Zona Cafetera, yes.
Yeah, and so for me, it's only the memories I have as a child. To me, it's totally a foreign place.
And I mean, the country has changed so much. Like from what I hear, it truly is not the same country as it was 20 years ago, thankfully, I would say.
Well, listen, when I had the opportunity to go, I didn't want to go because they were kidnapping Americans and I looked very American. And so I said to my dad, who did not look American, or my brothers and sisters, and I said, no, I'm good. I'm going to stay here where it's safer.
I don't blame you during that time. I really don't.
But at one point I should go visit, right? That you suggest definitely, right?
I would say so. At least I love it here.
All right. I guess you can be my tour guide.
Sure, it would be my pleasure, especially once I've made this into a really nice home base.
There you go. Lisa, it has been a pleasure getting to know you, but it's such a smidgen of who you are. And for me, it would be an incredible idea if you accept that we continue to become friends as we go along.
It would be my pleasure also. Thank you so much for having me on. Truly, you ask wonderful questions, just so deep and insightful. And yeah, thank you for having me.
Yeah, well, guess what? I want you on my other shows. I do have six others, right? So
brilliant. We'll
on my
set something up.
shows, definitely. Thank you again for today. And I'm sorry for the hiccup we had earlier. And before we go, tell us a little bit about your podcast.
Yeah, so in the Nutrition and Life podcast, of course, the main focus is nutrition, but we also speak about self-development things, fitness things. I do have some like mindset coaches on there as well. So I try to bring out one episode every week with a wonderful guest where I don't talk quite as much, thankfully, and I get to be the one asking the questions.
Great. You know, I would love to be on your show if you ever think that.
Great.
I've been a fitness expert my whole life, and you know.
Okay, awesome. Well, then we'll have to set something up on that front as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I only want to come on if I can bring value, right?
I most certainly
otherwise
think that you can.
it doesn't make sense, right? Lisa, have yourself an exceptional day, and everybody do me a favor, connect with Lisa. She has clients all over the world, so don't be afraid because she doesn't live in the same community you do, right? She knows how to help. Go connect with Lisa, everybody. Thank you, Lisa.
Thank you so much. Have a great rest of your day also.
All right, you too, everybody. Take care. See you next time. Bye-bye.